Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. Bleh. I've got no rhythm. Today I'm going to do a book tag. I'm calling it the 5 Terrible Books book tag, and I'm going to, on YouTube, I'll tag a whole bunch of other channels, and I invite anybody who sees this or anybody I tag to do something similar. Here are the only rules. You have to name 5 terrible books. The definition of terrible is you've read the book, you experienced it as terrible. Nothing more. You don't have to qualify. You don't have to talk about opinions being subjective or objective. You just have to name 5 books that you experienced as stinkers. The second rule is you can't choose anything that someone else already chosen. And I hope this way we're going to build a genuine canon of horseshit. Okay, 5 books. I'm going to start with a book of poetry that I read first in 2016. This author was all over Tumblr at the time, and that managed to get her a book deal. You know, for a book of poetry to have sold this many copies and turn the poet into a millionaire, that was something that I'd taken note of. I didn't have high expectations, but this exceeded any amount of terribleness that I could have imagined. I'm talking, of course, of Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur, which I bought and read, and then thinking maybe I'm just an old condescending fellow and not really the target audience. I showed it to my kids. They also found it laughable, laughably terrible. I'll give you one example. I'm going to read one of Rupi Kaur's poems. Brace yourselves. This is, they don't have titles. They're just twee little short thoughts, sometimes with pictures. And this one just goes like this. The one who arrives after you will remind me love is supposed to be soft. He will taste like the poetry I wish I could write. Deep breaths. Poetry she wishes she could write. Yeah, well, there's just that element of truth there in that last section. Oh, gosh. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because the longer I stayed, the less I loved myself. It's like you used to buy those books of graffiti that were capturing these little things that people had scrawled on toilet walls. That's what this is, and maybe that's what Tumblr was. It was just a sort of public convenience that people could scrawl their thoughts onto. This is terrible, and that's my opinion of that. Next one is a comic book. So I read a lot of comic books, so there have to be amongst the comic books that I read some terrible ones. This is such an item. Identity Crisis, written by Brad Meltzer, who has written a fair amount of fiction and sort of crime things, legal thrillers. I don't know what Brad Meltzer. I haven't read any Brad Meltzer. Drawn by Rags Morales and Mike Bear. I don't know Mike Bear. Rags Morales I've heard of. I must have consumed some other work by him. This is terrible. It sort of falls under that women in refrigerators trope. If you're not familiar, look up Gail Simone, Women in Refrigerators. It talks about based on an incident that happened in Kyle Rayner was Green Lantern, so not Hal Jordan, not even Guy Gardner, who's going to be in the new James Gunn movie, but a third-tier Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner. At the time, his live-in girlfriend, he comes home to find that his nemesis has killed and dismembered and stuffed inside the fridge his girlfriend. And Gail Simone wrote an essay pointing out the way that women in certain genres, it's not just comic books, if you've watched any episode of Criminal Minds or any number of action movies, you will find that violence towards women is just a motivating plot point so that the hero can become his best self. And it's just a shitty way to relate to women, a shitty misogynist way to use women as plot points and drive a hero towards a heroic end. And this sort of leans heavily into that. At the beginning, there is a murder of a superhero's wife. So again, some third, fourth tier superhero in the Justice League. Ralph Dibny was the elongated man. If you watch the sort of Flash TV show, I think he shows up in that. I don't believe his wife shows up in that. I don't remember. I never watched it. But Sue Dibny is married to Ralph Dibny, and at the beginning of this, Sue Dibny is killed. There is some other plot point about a rape that takes place where a super villain rapes somebody, and then all the superheroes get together and lobotomize the villain for the rape, and the rape is forgotten and never talked about again. And then because they think that super villain might have got his memory back and he might be the one who killed Sue Dibny. Spoiler, it wasn't him. It was some other deranged a person who did it, and that whole reveal is shit and terrible and misogynist as well. So genuinely terrible book. Identity Crisis by Brad Meltzer is the writer there. What else have I got here? Oh yeah, this was a global sensation and globally terrible. I bought this 25 more nearly 30 years ago. When I moved to Israel, didn't have access to the internet, didn't have books on hand, ran out something to read, went to the local secondhand bookshop and saw this there. I must have heard about it. I must have read it somewhere that it was a phenomenon, and decided to pick this up. But it was beyond terrible, and that is The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. Sort of an Indiana Jones adventure where there are 9. The Celestine Prophecy points to 9 insights that are hidden all over the world in caves and jungles and places, and the government don't want you to find out what these insights are, and they're insights like be nice to people, and if you shout over somebody, then it makes them feel bad. That kind of banal, trite, useless and nonsense. But these are insights the government is trying to stop you from getting, and the idea that if the government's around, there must be something valuable. Just terrible. That the adventure story is terrible. A whole cult built around it. Just people holding conferences discussing the insights and what you can learn from them, and then the follow-up book is called The 10th Insight. I mean, just genuinely globe-trottingly awful, terrible book of no possible value. I apologise if you have based. I don't apologise if you have based your life on the insights that you learn from the Celestine Prophecy. Then you have contributed to the terrible success of this terrible book. This is quite a sad one. This is a sort of celebrity book. I'm talking about Ayoade on Ayoade. Richard Ayoade was the star of the original UK version of the IT Crowd. I think he was the only person who stayed in the role when they tried to do it in America. Did they make a series or didn't get past the pilot? No. He's also actor, like a comedy actor originally. He now appears in a lot of panel shows in the UK. He's I say, directed movies, and this is a book about his life as a lifelong lover of movies. The problem is, Richard Ayoade, if you've ever seen him, he stays in character. So his whole celebrity personality is this sort of dour, joyless, awkward, socially awkward human being, and wherever he appears on panel shows, he plays this same role and stays in character, and it's fine. I kind of I like it, and it's funny, and occasionally you see him laugh and break character a little bit, but essentially the joke is that he's always a bit odd. In the character in the IT Crowd that he played was supposedly somewhere on the spectrum, or don't think is ever specified. This is a book about Richard Ayoade, a man who loves cinema, except he's written about himself as this sort of pompous self-molded. So the cover quote is by Richard Ayoade, and it says, "Once in every generation, a man writes a book. This is that book. I am that man, Richard Ayoade." And it's called Ayoade and Ayoade, which is kind of mimicking books, Truffaut on Truffaut. Is that an actual book? I think there have been famous cinema personalities who've written books, interviewed themselves, or other people have interviewed them. He's directed a couple of movies. Submarine, Joe Dunthorne's novel Submarine. He directed a movie, The Double, maybe with Jesse Eisenberg, based on Dostoevsky. Yeah, I might be misremembering that. So he has some chops, but this is about the history of cinema. He just puts himself in the middle of it, and this joke of this personality wears thin very early on. Super disappointing. Just painfully drawn out, horrible, dreadful, terrible read. Made me like him just a little bit less, that he could have gone to all the trouble of doing this. There is nothing here. Nothing to hang your hat on, and nothing to enjoy. Terrible book, Ayoade on Ayoade. And last up is a book that perhaps the most controversial of my 5 picks today. This is a work of literary fiction, was shortlisted for a prize or two. What was the Orange Prize back then? It's become the Women's Prize. And probably the most widely read of the 5 so far, and will have 5-star reviews on Goodreads. Also has plenty of 1-star reviews. We need to talk about Kevin by Lionel Shriver, which I'm on record as finding this book genuinely terrible. Now, just to be clear, a terrible book is not the same as a book you hate. That's a whole separate tag, a whole separate story. Books that I've read that I just hated, that weren't for me. No, I believe this to be a genuinely terrible book. And the reason I believe this to be a genuinely terrible book is the author has come with an agenda, and everything in the book is to try and get the reader on board with that agenda. And it's not clear, and it's not expressed in an honest way. It is all disingenuously put into plot points that, the only possible outcome from this story is you could agree with the author's hypothesis that having children is a terrible thing to do. Now, if you think that, that's fine. I'm okay with people choosing not to have children. Just I'm okay with people choosing to have children. And sometimes people choose to have children for the wrong reasons, and sometimes people choose not to have children for the wrong reasons. That's fine as well. Everyone's entitled to their own choices. But what I'm not okay with is someone having a point of view and then shoving it into every part of this book. In case you don't know, we need to talk about Kevin takes place, all narrated by Kevin's mother, Eva, and takes place in the aftermath of a terrible deed that Kevin has perpetrated. Murder, school shooting, all the trigger warnings. Turns out when we go back and look at Kevin's history since the moment he was born, and let's face it, Eva didn't really want to have kids in the first place. It was her husband, so she can't be blamed. From the moment he was born, he was a pretty awful child, and he cried a lot and threw tantrums and held his breath and everything, and all these things that she didn't want to have children in the first place all proved right. Eva was right all along. She should never have children, because if you have children, they turn out to be Satan. And then I think they have the second child, and young Kevin ends up mutilating that child and making their lives miserable. And no one believes her. They just think she's a terrible mother. But it's right. Her son's a sociopath, and why won't you believe me? And children is terrible. I should never have children. Anyway, leading all the way, Kevin, as a teenager, goes to school, kills everyone, and a whole bunch of people. Spoiler. Just terrible events occur, and this whole idea that Eva was right. You should never have children, because look what happens. They end up shooting everybody, and right till the final scene where Eva goes to visit Kevin in prison, where he's like realized, his freedom's been taken away. Oh, maybe he doesn't get to cause tantrums anymore. And, oh, look what happens to the terrible child who perpetrates the bloodiest school shooting in history, or at least in the reading of the book, and he sort of shows her grudging respect for always having known that he was rotten. So she walks away from this book, as I said, I was right all along. We should never have children. Children are terrible. Children are nothing. This person could never, there was nothing she could have done. She's absolved of all responsibility as a mother, because children are innately evil. That's the hypothesis of the book. That's what's being fed to you. I just think it's a little deranged. I found the book genuinely terrible. I threw it across the room, and then I put it on my shelf to lend to anybody who didn't believe me. 5 terrible books. What are yours? Take care. God bless. Bye. And now I will end the video.